Hey guys, Faerie Den Homestead here. So, today I wanted to do a little bit of a video talking about our homestead, as in why did we start a homestead, maybe why are we farming the way we are, and then also I want to talk about some of the more harsh realities of farming. And I suppose the point of this video is more to help everybody who's watching understand the purpose of why I started doing the videos and basically what you're going to get from my videos. So first off, I want to say thank you to everybody who watches, and I'm glad that you are getting some helpful information from my videos. Was kind of the purpose of starting the videos. So then we'll dive right in. We'll start with the why. So we started homesteading because, basically, a little bit of backstory. We live on this property with, as I've said before, my ex, his wife, their son, my husband, our daughter, our son, the son that everybody shares. And we moved here to this piece of land in Arkansas so that we could fulfill some family dreams for the children, for ourselves. And something that I had always wanted to do for my kids was have a homestead or a farm. I grew up spending time on my grandma's farm when I was a little girl. She was a cattle farmer until I was like 10, and we, a lot of our beef came from them, and my grandmother worked really hard. Her and my papa built that house. They made that land what it was. What it is now has been changed a little bit by my dad and his, my dad and mom and their other children that live there with them, my brother and his wife. So staying on track, the reason we started this homestead was basically to continue the way I'd been raising the kids, the way we had been raising the kids the whole time, but on a more natural, down-to-earth kind of way. So my kids usually don't get store-bought sweets. A lot of their life they had homemade sweets and everything else because I've been a stay-at-home mom, able to provide that for them. We have struggled in the past. My husband and I had a hard time, getting on our feet and everything, but our children have never suffered. And like when I couldn't afford to go buy clothes for me, but the kids needed clothes, we would buy clothes for the kids. And then I learned how to sew so that I could make some of my own clothes. And some of the dresses and skirts that you'll see me out in, those are clothes I actually designed myself and made by hand with a needle and thread. And those clothes are for everyday use. I did not intend them to be costumes or anything. I just wear them all the time whenever I have them. I haven't really been able to make any more lately, so my wardrobe is still as small as it was when I started. But I hope that kind of helps bring about the point that we're homesteading to provide a more natural, healthy lifestyle for our children and ourselves. But more than that, I want my kids to have helpful skills that if they needed them, if they needed to survive off of the land after they live this childhood, they will be able to survive off the land because we will have taught them how to do that. So the why of our homestead is family. The why is family. We are homesteading for our family, for the two families who have become one, for all the children, for the adults. We are homesteading for the family, for healthy food that we can be proud to eat, and to give our children a sense of pride and hard work and ownership and responsibility. So that's why we started the homestead. Now we're going to go moving on to what that brings us to next is our resources are really limited. So when we moved here, the intent was my husband was going to be able to take his heavy equipment operating job that he had in Texas and be able to get a heavy equipment operating job here. But it's a little different, and he wasn't able to do that. And then the economy, went the way it has, and so things have gotten really tight. And we have had to figure out how to keep our farm so that we can offset our grocery costs and feed healthy meat and vegetables and fruit to our children and ourselves, and be able to still maintain all of the other bills. So in order to do that, I learned how to make fodder. I learned how to grow fodder. I learned how to thresh hay by my hand. I learned how to spin wool. Tay at Serendipity Gardens, who is my son's bonus mom that shares property with me, she learned how to spin yarn with me. We learned together from just wool fiber. And you know, I knit clothes for the kids and everything like that. So we try to be as natural as possible. Now, I am also Native American, as well as being Irish Celtic. So both of those cultures play heavily into the way I farm and raise animals on my homestead at Faerie Den. The way I teach my kids to take care of animals and farm and raise them and everything. All of that plays in very deeply to cultures and family ties and kind of the way things have been for my, you know, the sides of the family for generations kind of thing. So we go a little old school around here. I have hand built basically all the coops and the paddocks and the dog houses and everything over since February, since we started in February. Moved here in January, we started the homestead in February. And what I want to say next is, before we get to the harsh realities, I want to say, here's what you can expect from my page, from my channel, from my homestead. Absolute honesty. I am not going to lie to you. I am not going to tell anybody that, oh, you know, one thing if it's not the truth. I'm going to tell you the truth. Even if I think that people are going to get mad at me, even if I think that I'm going to be canceled, even if I think that, you know, that it may offend someone somewhere or something for the animals or for whatever the situation is, but I'm going to be honest with you. The reason I am holding this heavy honesty policy is that when we were looking for information on how to homestead, there's a lot of information out there, you guys. You can find it everywhere. But not everybody is willing to tell you all of the hard parts of homesteading. Not everybody's willing to tell you that there are seasons in the year where everything's going to go great, and you're going to be booming and expanding, and then all of a sudden, when everything's going perfect, you're going to lose birds like this, or you're not, you know, feed prices are going to go through the roof and you can't afford to keep the sheep, and you're going to have to take your favorite sheep to butcher, and you know, or you have violently aggressive dog that you cannot rehome and have to have euthanized for the safety of everybody else involved. That is kind of what homesteading is about. You have to make the hard decisions, and in order, if you're homesteading like we are to try and feed your family or live off the grid or whatever your reason is, if you're homesteading and your family is reliant upon that food source, or monetary source even, then there are certain things that just have to be done, and for each homesteader that looks different. So with this channel and this page, I am showing you what homesteading means for us. What does it mean when we have to cull, when we have to, you know, when it's breeding season, when it's time to pick eggs, when something really bad happens and we have to make a hard decision. I want to be able to share that with people in the most, I guess, sensitive way that I can, because I understand it can be hard to understand why some of the things happen the way they do on the farm. But I think that it's important that people talk about it. I think that it's important that people see it, so that those of you who are just getting your start like we were in the beginning of the year, you know, you're maybe a little better prepared for these really hard decisions that you're going to have to make at some point. And I'm not even saying they'll happen in your first year. I'm just saying that at some point, as a homesteader or farmer, you have to make hard choices. So, on to harsh realities. I'm going to start that with this. What is in my hand are hides that I recently learned how to tan with salt and egg yolk. I don't know if I did them right, but they don't stink, they're not torn, they're dry, they're usable. These are from young rabbits, so I believe that's why they kind of sound like paper, because the skin's really thin. So at this point, if anybody's not interested in the harsh realities of farming from the Faerie Den perspective, or they don't want to, you don't want to hear the things that I'm going to say, or maybe you're just not ready for it yet, you might want to just find another video to watch at this point, because I'm about to kind of talk about some of these harsh realities that we've had to face and the hard decisions that we've had to make because of those harsh realities. So going on, these skins are from 6-week-old rabbits, and I will tell you why. Because first of all, it's cold, and fabric is expensive, clothing is expensive, so these are actually going to make some really nice warm face coverings for the children who have specifically requested them. So before anybody gets upset and wants to know why am I forcing my kids to wear the skin of a dead rabbit, my children specifically requested rabbit skin masks be made of the rabbits that I had to take anyway. So now we'll move on to that, how keep going. The rabbits were taken at 6 weeks because Freya here, I don't know if you can see her over there, probably not, but Freya is pregnant. She is about 25 or 26 days into her pregnancy. This is her first pregnancy. She is a large breed dog, Anatolian Shepherd and Great Pyrenees cross, and it is her first heat. I absolutely didn't want to have her bred on her first heat, but we really weren't familiar with the situation as much as we should have been. Even for all the research that I tried to do to keep up to date and have all the information that I needed to help take care of her properly, we weren't able to avoid my neighbor's livestock dog coming onto our property and breeding her. So at least I know he had a good temperament around the livestock, because at the time he started visiting, all of our birds were free range, and he never once batted an eyelash at the birds. We never lost any birds due to this little visitor here. So that is who fathered Freya's puppies. Now, her being pregnant has to do with these hides, because at that age, at 9-10 months old, getting pregnant, and especially knowing that in her family history, the females tend to have 11 or so pups in their first litter, she's going to have a whole lot of nutrients taken away from her. If I don't find a way to supplement her needs and make sure that her body has enough nutrients of everything that she needs while she's pregnant and nursing, this pregnancy could have serious detrimental side effects to her health later on in her life, starting with bone growth and everything else. So it is very important to me that my best LGD female is well taken care of, that she is healthy, that she has good puppies, that she is able to get enough nutrients, get enough food for her and the pups, and later for her in the milk, so that the pups have enough milk. That translates into processing 6-week-old rabbits, because it is faster to raise rabbits up to 6 weeks and then take them, because at that size they are I'm not trying to be graphic, but I don't have another way to describe it. They are a perfectly sized meal for an adult LGD. For one whole rabbit is a perfectly sized meal at 6 weeks old. So she needs this extra supplement, and with the cost of only grain for the fodder to feed the rabbits, it's very easy to get her a good, healthy food source that I know where it came from. I know how it's been growing. I know it's good for her, and give it to her so that I can ensure that she comes through this pregnancy and her puppies come through this pregnancy as healthy as possible. So that's one of the harsh realities of farming. Did I want to take 6-week-old rabbits? No, I did not. I would much prefer to be able to raise them to full size and then take them, because we are raising meat rabbits for food. However, because we're raising them for food and I have something on the farm that needs that extra food source now, it is smarter to take them at this size than it is to wait the extra 2 or 3 weeks, because at this size, mom could be rebred at least a week. About once the kits are 5 weeks, we rebred the doe. So then I waited another week and I took the bunnies. And again, the reason I did this was for the health of my dog, so that this animal, whose entire job on this farm is to protect the children and the livestock, and the farm itself, so that she is able to do her job. It takes a while to get them trained. It takes a lot to bond with them. That's another part of the harsh realities. This breed has 2 modes, and they are genetically based. And what I mean by that is there are people out there who are breeding them for the looks, for the ability to be a house pet. But the harsh reality is, for thousands of years, those 2 breeds of dogs, or other livestock breeds of dogs, have been bred specifically to do the job, as in guard livestock, protect the family, be trustworthy around the livestock. So if you are breeding specifically for looks and you are not paying attention to the personality traits of your LGDs, you will end up with puppies. Not could, you will at some point end up with puppies that are not temperamentally correct, which means they could be perfectly fine for a while and then snap. That's kind of what happened with Brigid. They could be they could be perfect in other aspects, but it could take them up until they're 2 years old to be fully trained with your livestock. Now, I know there are people out there that say that that's perfectly fine and that's okay and it's a great method, and it is. There are some people out there that works wonders for. But on Faerie Den, we have a heavy predator load. When we moved here, we saw cougars. I saw them in the backyard, and I wasn't the only one. We had a bear. That was in January. We have had coyotes, we have had raccoons, we have had foxes. We have predators on this farm. I do not have the time to, as insensitive as it sounds, I don't have the time, because my livestock relies on those dogs and my family relies on the livestock, to spend 18 months training a dog, waiting for it to be capable of doing its job. Because in those 18 months, my livestock is vulnerable, which means my family is vulnerable. So the breed, a few thousand years ago when they were started, I guarantee you that shepherds didn't wait until their dogs were 2 years old to be able to leave them with the livestock. They didn't have the time to wait either. Their family relied on that livestock, or their town relied on that livestock, a village or whatever, but they didn't have the time to wait for 2 years for a whole dog, one dog to be trained up or anything. They needed to have those dogs trained up and ready to do their job by the time their size caught up with their instincts, which meant, at 6, 7, 8 months old, those dogs should have been fully trustworthy with the poultry, with any large livestock that they were charged with protecting, and including the people. The temperaments needed to be just right, because that shepherd or that farmer needed to be able to trust that when they left the flock or they left the farm, these dogs would do their job. They wouldn't come home to a number of dead birds or dead livestock because the dog killed it. That was very important, and it is for us too. Every lost bird is a lost meal at this house. Every lost sheep is a lost meal. It's very important that we don't lose our birds or our sheep when we have them during the from spring to fall, because we raise sheep to slaughter. Sorry, that was probably a harsher word than I should have used. We raise sheep for food. So we get them in the spring, and then in the fall they leave the farm. But we can't have our livestock animals attacking and killing or eating our livestock, because they're taking food away from the family, and they are fed well enough. My livestock dogs get a mix of dog food and raw food, a raw diet, which means sometimes they get products from the farm in their food, like eggs or meat, or even whole rabbits, sometimes whole small birds. They're always well butchered and processed so that they're not recognizable as a charge that they are taking care of. This isn't necessary with good breeding. With these dogs, that's not necessary. If they have good breeding and they have a low prey drive, which they should, and they have a good temperament, and you have a good bond with them, you shouldn't have them running around your property eating your livestock, no matter how you serve to them their raw food. That's just been my personal experience, and the experiences that I have heard from other farmers who do it very similar to us. You're not getting it. This is mine. And you'll notice she's very interested in this rabbit skin, but this dog isn't going to take the rabbit skin out of my hand. She knows better. I have instilled a trust and a bond with my LGDs that's very important. On that subject, when we had to have Brigid euthanized, it was because of that bond. It was because of her breeding, the bad genetics in her line. As far as I was aware, her father had some temperament issues. He had some problems with resource guarding. And when we got her, I was so new to this, I didn't think that the experience of raising LGDs was going to be that different from any other dog I've trained. You know, I've raised pit bulls and Amstaffs, I've raised bulldogs, mastiffs, chihuahuas, schnauzers, poodles. I have also like a high wolf content or mid wolf content dog. I've raised a few different breeds of dog, especially the obstinate ones. I don't know why, but I like them. When it came to the LGDs, I didn't think it was that different. Here's the truth. These dogs are like raising nothing else. It is not even close to the same as any other type of dog that I have ever raised in my life. Training them is different. There's a special bond there, one that you have to have in order for you to work together with your partner or your LGDs. If you can't trust that dog, they won't trust you. You'll notice how big this girl is. I'm not sure if you can see her, but you'll notice, if you can, you would see she's sitting down is up to my hips. If this lady here, even 26 days pregnant, decided that she didn't want to deal with me anymore and wanted to get rid of me, she could right now while I'm taping this video, and there would be nothing anybody could do to stop her, because she weighs almost 100 pounds and has the bite force of an alligator. Now, if you put that against a child, you run into serious, serious problems. And I was not willing to risk the fact that the other dog, Brigid, she started to get aggressive with me. She started to get aggressive with her alpha here, her female alpha in the pack outside, the dogs, amongst the dogs. That is Freya. Freya is the top dog, and then I am on top of all of them. Her and Brigid started to get into tussles. Brigid started to get to where really nothing could come near me without her aggressively charging, grabbing a hold of it and shaking. If she had done that to a child, specifically, just any child, she had done that to a child, that child would be mutilated. There's no nice way to say that. That dog was going to hurt someone. And as much as it hurt me, as much as I love her, as much as it's very painful, but that's one of those harsh realities of farming, you guys. That dog was a serious danger to my children. She was a serious danger to the guardian, who has done the best job, who is the best candidate for breeding on this farm based on temperament and personality and everything else. She was going to completely disrupt the farm itself, and then eventually she would have hurt someone severely, if not killed them. With all of the training that I had and all of the types of dogs I've raised and all the different ways I've trained them, I even tried new ways. There was no way to help her for me. And unless I were to get lucky, like I did with the male LGD that we had on the property, Thor, and find a canine trainer that she would instantly sink to, like Thor did with this other woman, there was no way out for Brigid. She was going to end up euthanized or in a bad situation. Either way, she was becoming very dangerous. And the way she had heavily bonded to me to a point where she decided that nobody else was good enough, there wasn't any way for me to trust that she could go to somebody else and not cause them serious harm and not be a dangerous threat to them, let alone their livestock, their livelihood, their family. With all of those things as factors that I had to consider, for our farm, this was the only option. And it was a really hard decision. I don't feel good about it. I know it was necessary. That's part of farming. You have to get used to the hard decisions, and you have to learn how to accept that some things just happen, that some things are necessary. When you have something like a large dog that is bred specifically for something like livestock guarding, they are equipped with the muscles, the teeth, and the claws to get the job done. These dogs can fight off cougars. They can fight off bears. They can fight off packs of coyotes and wolves. They're nothing to play with. You can't take the risk that maybe she wasn't going to hurt one of the kids. I couldn't take that risk, especially because we have a child on the property who has autism, and it just wasn't a safe situation for everybody. And so as a huge family, all of us got together and made the decision that had to be made for the safety of the family, for the safety of anybody else in the future. Not to mention, she had already been shot in the face with a BB gun the day before we had to have her euthanized, which told me she was most likely in someone else's property after she got off the leash when our birds were safe and terrorizing their livestock. So she was no longer just a threat to our livestock. She was becoming a threat to my neighbors as well. And I know many of them rely on their farms to feed their families. I know a lot of them rely solely on their farms to pay their bills. So that's also something I had to take into consideration, and so this is what it is. The harsh realities are sometimes you have to take animals before you want to. Sometimes when you are trying, sometimes when you try to do everything right, and you can do everything right, and it still goes sideways. That is how farming works. It's not all smooth sailing. There are lots of bumps, there are lots of cracks, there are lots of hills and mountains to climb, and and rocks to trip over, and it's just, that's all farming is. It is figuring out how to work the land, how to raise your animals in a way that is satisfying for you, and in my opinion, humane and fair to the animal. And it's learning all of those skills and being able to provide for your family with them. And when it comes down to my family, I don't play games. I just don't. So if the farm is meant to feed my family, I'm going to defend that farm in any way that I need to. If that means that unfortunately a dog has to leave the property or be put down depending on the situation, then that's what happens. If I have to go out and cull an entire group of birds because one bird got sick and I don't want it to move, I'm going to do that too. If I have to take 6-week-old rabbits so that I can feed my dog, and ensure that her and her puppies are getting a well-balanced nutritional meal that makes sure that she's healthy, that she comes out of this pregnancy without any health complications or anything, you know, that makes her life the way it's supposed to be so that she could do her job on this farm, then that's what I'm going to do. And you know, all of these videos that you'll be seeing from us are all about the way we live here. None of them are false. They're not lies. I am not going to try and trick you. And again, if that's not what you're looking for, if you want, you know, some more sensitive versions of homesteading, or you know, a softer description, or I'm not even sure, if you just don't like the way that I talk about it or explain it on our farm, that's fine. You know, feel free to move on. I am only doing these videos because I want to help the people who want to learn the way we're doing it. So if you want to learn the way Faerie Den Homestead runs, maybe to try and run your own homestead in a similar way, or you know, maybe you've done everything in this way and now you want to try something new, or maybe you're just curious about how other people do it or how another homestead does it, or you just want to know how we do it because you're just curious, stick around, keep watching, and know that we do this for our family. Sometimes the videos are going to be hard, and I will not lie to you. I'm going to be honest. And that's just what it is. That's part of homesteading. You know, if you want to be a part of a community and you want to homestead and you want to take it, you know, and you're taking it seriously, and you want to do it the way we're doing it, then there are some harsh realities that come with that. This year we've had to butcher 4 ducks from we actually had to take all 10 from a breeding program. I had to take all 10 from a breeding program because I got screwed. The breeder of those ducks, and again, it goes back to breeding, and a lot of farming does go back to breeding. A lot of farming issues does go back to breeding when it comes to your livestock or your livestock dogs. But you know, we lost those ducks, we lost a dog, we lost those animals to screwy breeding. They were lazy about their breeding practices. They didn't bother to pay attention to the temperament of the parents of the dog. They didn't bother to pay attention to the health of the ducks, or you know, how long those generations had been breeding probably in their pen. So those two recent losses were due to negligence on the part of the breeder who we got the animals from, not necessarily anything that was improperly done on the farm as far as training or feeding or health needs, or health needs being met. You know, and then earlier in the year we bottle fed our first lamb, and we raised our first sheep. And we raised 3, and one of them ended up having to be put down or euthanized because he got extremely sick and he could no longer see, and he was half the size of everybody else, and he just wandered in circles. And my dogs saw him as a threat to the farm and were behaving inappropriately because of his sick animal behavior. And so in order to preserve the appropriate behavior in my females, we had to remove him, as well as really ending his suffering because he was really miserable. And just being fair to him, honestly, I think it was more kind to do what we did than to try and raise him the rest of his life to be blind and never able to be with the females because we couldn't have him breed with them. And then the other 3 we ended up, you know, having to send off to someone who also screwed me by changing the plans last minute. So this year has been really difficult for us as far as getting started, and we have learned a lot of hard lessons. Like, sometimes somebody will seem like somebody great to work with on the farm, and they'll really screw you over. You know, they'll take all your sheep and change the plan. You know, sometimes you will think you're getting a really good deal on some birds. Turns out they weren't paying attention to the breeding practices. Now you have a whole flock of reproductively useless birds that don't really help you as far as getting eggs or the health of your flock, and also pose a danger to the health of your flock, because now they're out there, and if they can reproduce, their genes are being passed on to healthy birds, causing or passed on with the genes of healthy birds, causing unhealthy birds to be hatched, which isn't great for you or anybody who gets birds from you, you know. Or maybe sometimes you'll get screwed by a dog breeder and you'll end up with a dog that you work for 9 months with and you love deeply, and you spend every morning having coffee with them and talking to them, and you miss the sound of their growl because you had to put them down because they got violently dangerous because their breeding was improper. Sometimes homesteading is extremely hard, and there are days where I wake up and I go, man, I want to quit. But then I remember the rewards that we've gotten since we've started and the things that it's doing for my family as a whole, all of us. And I couldn't see living any other way. It's hard, but it is the way to live for us. So that's really all I wanted to say. Was I just wanted to let you guys know what you could expect from my page, and kind of why we wanted to, why this, a little bit about Faerie Den and my thinking and how I run the farm and why. So thanks for listening, everyone. Faerie Den Homestead out. Yes.